Hello, I'm Charling and this is Stellaris. I'm sure that the majority of you have probably been watching Let's Plays and streams leading up to this game's release and already have a good idea about what the game is and how it works. But for those of you who don't, Stellaris is Paradox's latest grand strategy title. But unlike its predecessors, Crusader Kings 2 and Europa Universalis 4, it's set in a science fiction universe, and takes some of the mechanics from the previous games and adding them into what is essentially a 4X game. Now that's expand, explore, exploit and exterminate for those of you who don't know. Now there is an ability to customize your empire when you start the game, as should be expected in a game like this. You get to choose your race and the coat of arms for your empire, each with varying degrees of customization, and all of which are basically aesthetic, as well as a number of different descriptors for your race and empire. You can also choose the ethics of your empire, which in turn will determine what government type you can choose for your empire, and these settings will actually change the way your empire plays. So how the other empires behave or react towards you, and also affect the response choices and descriptions for the various events that occur throughout the game. Also, the planet you choose for your homeworld will govern what type of planets have the highest habitability and the lowest for your empire. And of course, this will significantly affect your game as well, especially at the beginning. You do unlock the ability to colonize other planets that you research and ways to increase the habitability of planets in general, but for the most part, the one you choose at the beginning will always be the best. You can also select the look of your ships from 6 current presets. I think I would have liked to have seen more color variation, but no doubt there'll be DLC for visual customization for this kind of thing in the near future. You get to choose your starting weapon type as well, and keep in mind that your starting weapon can also be changed, so you aren't going to be locked into this. You can research other weapons as you progress through the game. And finally, you can choose your warp method. Now this will determine how your ships travel between the star systems. There's hyperspace, which means you are basically forced to travel along hyperspace lanes. You've got wormholes, which allow you basically to travel within a certain range of any wormhole generators, and you've got warp, which allows you to travel a certain distance from your specific ship. And all of these methods are going to, as I said, affect the way your ships travel around the galaxy, and this is something that you're going to be stuck with once you have selected it. As far as I can tell, at least, I have not come across any way to change it. So all in all, there is a fair amount of customization that will affect the way the game plays out and what strategies you are going to need to employ to be successful. So I think that no matter what kind of player you are, there's going to be something here to fit your gameplay style. And something I forgot to mention, you can also customize your universe when you go into starting a game, as in how many star systems there are going to be, the number of AI empires, as well as advanced AI empires. Now these are basically AIs that start with an advantage. What kind of layout of the galaxy is going to be, elliptical, spiral or ring, game difficulty, and in fact whether you can lock down a specific FDL method. So you can force everyone in the game to play with wormholes or hyperdrives and that kind of thing, which I think is actually quite nice, depending on what kind of game flow you want to enjoy. And then, of course, for those who are a sucker for punishment, there is Iron Man mode. And that pretty much sums up all the customization. Once you load up into the game, you'll probably go, oh, this looks like all the other 4X space games that I've played. Yes, there are a bunch of stars, and each of the stars are surrounded by a bunch of planets that may or may not be habitable and may or may not have a number of resources. Now, there are a number of resources that are important that I should probably point out. You have energy, which is basically your currency in the game. There are minerals, which are basically used to build absolutely anything in the game. There is influence as well, but this is not something that you can mine. This is something that just increases over time, and you can have it increase more with certain kinds of research. And then, of course, there are 3 different types of research resources: physics, social, and engineering. Each of them have different things that can be researched within each tree, which we'll talk about a little bit later in the game. Now, all of these resources are acquired by mining. So in order to get the energy or the minerals or any of the actual research resources, you have to build mines on the planets that contain them. So for pretty much the majority of the game, as you expand your empire, you're going to be trying to take the planets that offer you the most resources, and you're going to be trying to build colonies that are on planets that are the most habitable. And as you progress through the game, eventually you can build these colonizing ships that are going to colonize these planets, and you're going to have to build small fleets to destroy pirates that appear, or some of the wandering aliens that kind of roam around the systems, irritating your construction and your science ships. Also, once you've colonized planets, there's a tile system to be found, much like Civilization or Galactic Civilizations, where you will assign population to work a specific tile, and basically this tile will give you benefits, and you can eventually start researching and building structures or buildings that are going to increase a specific tile's effectiveness. And also, once you colonize planets for the first time, some of the tiles will be blocked by various things like volcanoes or jungles or any other number of obstacles, depending on what kind of planet it is, that will basically have to be removed once you research the tech in order to remove the blockage. So as you're progressing through the story and you're busy collecting these resources and expanding your empire, every now and again there's going to be an event that pops up that's going to require your input and have a variety of different outcomes depending on your choices. And I'm not going to talk too much about these since I don't want to spoil anything, but I will say there are a fair amount of them, and they really do add to your empire story, which is quite nice indeed. And some of these events are actually long chains of events that you can track gradually and make your way through them, getting rewards along the way. So let's talk a little about the way the research works in this game. Now, in most 4X games, most strategy games, you have a tech tree. There is no tech tree as such where you can just choose what you're going to research. There are basically three categories. There's physics, there's social, and there's engineering. And all of these trees can be researched simultaneously. And each time you finish that piece of research, you'll get to choose another piece of tech in that tree, which from what I can tell is somewhat random for the most part in those categories. So if you have certain empire traits, you can get to choose from 4 for your specific empire. But obviously there is some kind of structure. You aren't going to get laser 4 before getting laser 3. So there's obviously a pool of tech that these choices are being drawn from for you to pick from. And some of the tech even falls into the rare/purple category, meaning that it usually offers some nicer benefit, but will take a little bit longer to research. So the speed of the research is going to be based on how much research points you have in a specific category, that you're getting from your worked tiles and that you're getting from various planets and mines within the game. You can also get these research points and new tech from scanning debris from ships that are destroyed in battle. But I think overall the research system is quite interesting. It's definitely different and it forces you to adapt. As with many of the other Paradox titles, it's all about making the best of what you've been given and your current situation. So look, some of you may not like the randomness of the research because you can't sort of beeline your way to the best tech or the best build or that kind of thing. You are entirely dependent on what research options you get presented with in your playthrough. Personally, I did find it quite refreshing and interesting, and it kind of gets you to think a little bit more carefully about what you're actually going to take and also plan out how you're going to progress from there. Also, as you progress through the story, you're going to need to start building fleets, whether you're a passive or militaristic player, because you're going to need to defend your stuff. There are pirates in the games as well as other ships, as I mentioned earlier. So your fleets can be built from a number of sort of preset designs. You can actually customize the designs of your various classes of ships, like what weapons they have, their shields, their armor and power and that kind of thing. And everything that's put on a ship uses power. So the loadouts you're going to choose are going to be limited to how much power you can actually supply. So each ship has a limited number of slots, and with the larger vessels obviously they have more slots. So you're going to have to make choices based on, this is how much power I have and these are the kinds of weapons I'm going to use. Obviously more powerful weapons use more power, better shields are going to use more power as well. So this is all stuff that you have to take into account, and if you haven't managed to unlock these better power generators, you're going to be limited to what you can actually put on your ships. So you might have to think laterally as to how to equip your ships. Each of the ships also have preset slot loadouts. So, do you want a ship with 3 small weapon mounts and 5 utility slots? Or do you want one with one large weapon mount and 3 small utility slots? And this is all going to depend on what you want the role of the ship to be in combat, as well as what kinds of ships you are going up against. So I think there's going to be a fair amount of variety with regard to ship loadouts and ship builds going forward. I'm sure people are going to come up with some interesting combinations of fleet. So there's a fair amount of customization here, which is nice indeed. So since we're talking about the ships, let's talk about the combat itself in the game. Now the combat itself is not interactive in the sense that you actually micromanage your ships. All you're really going to be doing is sending your ships to a specific place and they'll automatically engage the enemy. And outside of retreating, there's not any real interaction or micromanagement in combat itself. Of course, you can set the stances of ship and how they're going to behave, but everything otherwise is controlled by the AI. You can hire leaders for your various fleets, as well as your colonies and your science ships, which enable you to get other bonuses. But again, this doesn't allow you to actually control your fleets. They just sort of add bonuses to your planets and your things and stuff like that. The wars in Stellaris play out very much the same way as they did in EU4 or Crusader Kings 2, in that you'll make certain demands before starting a war, and as you win battles, invade, capture planets, you'll accumulate what is called war score, and when it reaches 100%, you have the option of ending the war and having your demands met. You can choose to end it before you get 100%, but then of course you're not going to get everything that you want. So the conditions of the war are set before you actually go into the war. So you can't just go in there and just start taking absolutely everything like you would in perhaps a normal strategy game. So I've spent about 25 hours or so with Stellaris, and I'm really enjoying the game. Time seems to pass incredibly quickly when I'm playing it, which I suppose is a statement that I'm really enjoying the game and having a lot of fun. I've played a fair amount of Crusader Kings 2 and some Europa Universalis 4, but not as much as Crusader Kings 2. And I think for those of you who have been avoiding Crusader Kings and Europa Universalis because they seem so dauntingly complicated, you'll be happy to know that getting into Stellaris is much less scary. I think partially because Stellaris seems a little bit simpler than the aforementioned games, or perhaps it's just because you get to start on a clean slate as opposed to being dumped into what is already an web of intrigue that needs to be fixed immediately in the other two games. But it does seem simpler in many ways than Paradox's other titles. I think that Stellaris will bring a great deal of new players into the world of Paradox's grand strategy games, and in fact is a good stepping stone if you are interested in checking some of the more complicated titles. I think that if you like 4X games, or you enjoy grand strategy titles, or even if you enjoy immersive space games that create all kinds of interesting narratives for your empire, this is definitely worth checking out. At any rate, I do hope that this video has been helpful to some of you to give you an idea of whether the game is worth picking up or if it's something that you'd enjoy or not. And if you have any questions or comments, you can leave them in the section below. Thanks for watching. I've been Charling. Until next time.
01 Marshall 170